After a revolution and a counter-revolution, Revachol lives in a limbo where its people might have had their future on their hands for a while, but any plans were ultimately crushed by hegemonic world powers. You can feel the despair, a void existing in the city regarding in which direction collective progress lies. And so it is riddled with drug addiction, violence, crime, alcoholism, and health issues. All issues the coalition, the liberal so-called moralist local government formed by a coalition of foreign countries, has not been able to solve. This is the same coalition that, under the pretext of democratic values of the free world, a counterpart of the real world's global north, took the agency of Revachol's population away from their hands. The motive is clear and common. There are economic interests, and these are sold as values to Revachol's population to steal from them the ability to tread their own path at their own risk and responsibility. The coalition and moral internsposition is like that of someone who convinces himself that what it is doing is the right thing to do, even though they wouldn't be doing it, without the underlying goal of maintaining monopoly of a very important port in the world of Disco Elysium. Revachol is, after all, very close to the geographical center of the world and is thus a vital strategic location. Among other things, the complete dissociation from reality and bizarre infantilization of foreign cultures by the coalition powers is very well represented by a character we find called Sunday Fran. Sunday Fran will ramble on about market logic and currency devaluation, even when you intervene with some counter-arguments or just simple questions, reciting the same things in an echo chamber over and over. In the midst of a collapsed country, Sunday Fran, a bureaucrat from the so-called democratic free world, is incapable of serious analysis of the reality of the Revachol people live in. He will say it is all for their own good, but he doesn't even know what are their wrongs. Asked when will we start seeing some progress in Revachol from the implemented politics of the coalition, he will dismiss it, saying that we will still need to wait for things to have effect, while current conditions are alarming. This is the best the world can muster to approach Revachol's problems. A government that the people haven't chosen, who hasn't even solved basic vital problems. And so the background for Disco Elysium, a dispute between workers and company, is left to be mediated by no one. As a representative of democracy and of the people, there is very little interest and ability from the government to mediate a dispute between Revachol's most influential company and its workers, denouncing its absolute failure. The violence of Revacholian revolution's political defeat continues to reproduce itself to the present, where an old revolutionary veteran is ultimately the culprit for triggering a series of events that potentially end in a massacre by killing a foreign mercenary hired by a local company to put pressure on striking workers. The deserter has been in hiding for decades after, like the name suggests, having deserted during the invasion by the coalition military. The depression of the defeat has made him bitter and critical with the current state of affairs, even of the people themselves. He embodies the omnipresent depression of Revachol. No hope, no future, humiliated and robbed of its ability to make its own destiny. Backing the feeling of political defeat is the feeling of impotence described when he tells the story of the invasion of Revachol by the coalition. There is almost a fantastical element to it, which illustrates very well what freedom actually means in the liberal democratic realm. To a very long extent, it is non-existent. Almost with cosmic horror-like contours, he explains how power will show you all his might to crush your hopes, to assume the reins of your life, as if it is the most threatening action you can take, exposing what lies behind humanity's mask of democratic values. A power so mighty, but being proven so useless. This manipulation of moral values at any given point is made evident in the adoption of the status quo from local government. No fascism nor communism, complete social stagnation and inability to solve social problems. All hope is pinned in sporadic events that will hopefully allow for progress, events that aren't planned for at all. There is no plan for progress if you push for things to not change. There is a complete abandonment of the future, perhaps very much motivated by your own mortality. Why plan for long-term progress if we're going to die anyway? Ironically, it tramples on the usual humanist ideals of traditionalists. It even, in a way, contradicts capital's ideals of continuous and quick adaptation and expansion. We are encouraged to discuss and solve problems in the workplace for the sake of profit. Be analytical and plan, but his approach to matters is not translated to real life. plans for such matters are plagued with inability to address them and stagnation. Stagnation in this case means that Martinez stays a drug-ridden hole where kids become addicted early in their lives and where there is no hope for anyone, no place for individual emancipation. In this sense, one of the most admirable characters is perhaps Joyce Messier. If we take her declarations at face value, Joyce Messier is a very intellectually honest neoliberal, like an old-school capitalist, a Fordist who almost understands the effects of what she defends and is not against the thought of it ending. She is just not sure what could there be afterwards. Drawing some parallels with the famous End of History, the only contradiction is that of her double criteria, the pragmatism and hands-on approach when negotiating corporate business, but uncertainty and fear when hypothesizing if there is no more to humanity other than capital. An example, again, of the contradiction between capital's push for change and fast adaptation, but inability of approaching social problems with more or less the same mindset. The corrupt local union, who has garnered a significant amount of power, effectively controlling a neighborhood, gives an interesting example on political hope. At the moment, progress and collective organization comes with a cost: corruption, open corruption. However, this is an organization that is in touch with problems and with the people. It has implemented itself in their lives, and contrary to any other organization with any power in the game, it is seemingly the only one that acts. The overall picture is far from perfect, less than satisfactory in fact. However, it allows for an open field of political debate, of continuously pushing forward, hopefully to a point where corruption is made obsolete in its effects and useless to pursue. There is a critique of the dualism of pragmatic progressivism and the idealist revolutionism. The idea that one should wait for the right moment to perpetually prepare the revolution, undermining all one's actions as useless and eventually giving way to conformism. The second individual is personified by the Communist Book Club, of which a couple people who like to theorize about politics, communism specifically, but have zero participation in society are part of. In this sense, they engage in political discourse that would risk making them technocrats, discussing, for instance, the capacity of each system to produce beans. In this sense, the Union, with all its deep folds, is probably the thing closer to taking a step in a direction related to some sort of progress, a kickstart out of the current limbo. The one that is probably more likely to allow a certain level of political debate needed to push further change. On the other hand, the power's farce of a human mask is also present here. The Union's leader adopts a posture very much like politically correct liberal, in which he renders any criticism thrown at him useless, by admitting all his faults. There is some sort of underlying psychology here that seems to indicate that no one is more entitled and well equipped to criticize him than himself. As mentioned though, this is something that in a way already happens in the liberal realm, and so it doesn't seem to constitute a step backwards. The cryptozoologist narrative offers an alternative fantastical view of the world of Disco Elysium. It gets in touch with how the world is a much more complex and volatile place, where all its uncountable and uncontrollable variables offer a glimmer of hope against the submission of the power structures. Behind a materialistic worldview, there is space for other things to happen. It reminds us that although there is an effort to write humans off as economic animals, there is a lot more than moves us, deeper than the artificially created desires that capital imprinted on us. Capitalism has infantilized us and solved our existentialism for us, by making us adopt someone else's dreams. However, cryptozoologists free of this framework have decided to follow through with their own desires, that of a almost literal wild goose chase, it's true, but one that is up for them to choose. They embody the true individual freedom, made possible in a world built to supply its inhabitants with their basic needs, and in that freedom, absolute individual responsibility. The complexity of Harry's mind feeds into how the world is such a complex place, the multiplicity of one's mind, and a reminder of the multidimensionality of each one of us. Proof that in such a complex system we can predict everything, and here is where hope is born. Disco Elysium provides us with imagery and language to give form to the despair of not being able to control one's destiny, but it also gives form to how hope can and perhaps should still exist in such a world. After all, not everything is linear, and things can and do happen when you least expect. Most importantly, one should be prepared for when they do.